All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third session in our student organization training series, hosted by the Department of Campus Involvement here at St. Cloud State. My name is Nate Duncan. I am the graduate assistant for student organizations, and I will be the presenter for today's topic, effective meetings for your student organization. So we'll go ahead and get started right away. So some of the topics that we are going to be discussing today, we have meeting formats, intended outcomes for your students in your student organization, and engagement in your meetings. So for your meeting format, one of the biggest questions is, how does your meeting run? Is there a structure to the meeting? Do you have a set plan for how things are going to operate? Who does most of the talking in these meetings? Is it mostly the organization leaders that are speaking out to the student members, or is it more of a discussion-based meeting where everybody has a chance to have some input? And with that, when do those student members enter the conversation, or do they, if it is, if they do at all? If, of course, the meeting that, like your meeting format and your meeting structure is more so based on that discussion or facilitation based. So if the leaders are really just outwardly portraying what's going on for the organization coming up, or something like that. So those are some of the things to think about for sure, as well as is the meeting for reporting out info? So like I had just said, is it more about talking about what's coming up or what the leadership team is planning or doing? Or is it more for programming? So we have some of our more social organizations that might be having more like some of their actual programming. The events that they're hosting really are those meetings. So it really just depends on what the meeting is, what you're intending for the meeting, if you're having some of that programming be a part of it, or if you're going to have that be separate and really just use the meeting to collaborate, discuss, and figure out what's going to be going on for the coming weeks, days, months for the organization. And it could be both. Maybe you could do a little bit of that reporting out from the leaders to the organization members, have a little bit of discussion, and then have a bit of programming there at the end. So it could be a little bit of both as well. And then something else that you might want to think about is, does your organization have a secretary or a note taker that can keep track of some of those things that are discussed in the meetings in case there are members that weren't able to make it and are not in attendance? And then you'll want to make sure that those notes that are taken by the secretary or note taker are uploaded to the documents section of your Huskies Connect, or emailed out to all the student members so that everybody has access to those meeting notes or meeting minutes, as they're called. We're also going to talk a little bit about the intended outcomes for your organization meetings. So this would be asking the question, what do you want students to get out of attending this meeting? Do you want them to gain leadership skills from attending the meeting? Do you want to have it more of like a lecture or learning? Do you want them to gain a sense of community in getting to do some of those programming events, or just talking with each other and being in a shared community space together? And that really can depend on what your organization is about. The mission of your organization, if you're a service organization, if you are an academic organization, a social organization. So that can really change what the intended outcome of that meeting might be. And each meeting can be different. So you can have a meeting that is really more like you want them to get your members to get some leadership skills out of it, as opposed to learning in one meeting as opposed to another. So it's just really being intentional about what you want your students to get out of the meeting. Set these goals beforehand these learning outcomes or intended outcomes for your members so that you know exactly what you're trying to do as you're going forth in the meeting. And then there's also a model that you can follow called the ABC model. And the A stands for audience, the B is behavior, and the C is consequence. So we're really talking about here, who is your audience? So of course, that'll be those in attendance at your meeting. What's the behavior that you want them to be able to show by coming to your meeting? And the consequence, so what will they get out of it that they can bring into their personal life or their future? So I have a little example here. So you can plug in whatever you want for these underlined sections. So I want the members of my student org, that would be your audience, to learn about resume building strategies, that would be the behavior, so that they can be prepared for entering the workforce, that would be your consequence. And then you can adjust each of these sections however you see fit for whatever you're trying to be intentional about as you're going into your meeting. So you can use this as a structure for developing those intended outcomes before you have your meetings, if you want to try to be a little bit more intentional about it. We also are going to mention a little bit about engagement. So we want to ask, how do you keep your students involved in your meetings? Some of the ways that we've seen student leaders make meetings more engaging for their student members is to make them fun and have something that's a bit more hands-on or a bit more involved for the students. So instead of having a meeting where it's really just getting information out to everybody, also maybe having a little bit of an event or something that they can look forward to for the meeting, as well as just having a bit of information given to them. And yes, as I just mentioned, you can do this through programming or events. So just having some kind of programming that you're going to have, like a leadership event, or just getting to know each other a little bit, just something that you're really being intentional about, making sure that students are able to build that community and be excited about coming to the meeting, knowing that there is something that they're going to be able to do there with their with the peers that they have in your student organization. Another popular idea that some student leaders have incorporated into their meetings is a like high-lows kinds of system towards the end of the meeting, where once you're done with all the business and all of the programming and everything, having a highs and lows of the week, or like kind of like a check-in for student members to just say, yeah, I got a high this week. Something really good happened to me, or yeah, it's kind of, I have a low. Things aren't going really my way this week. And that can really start to build that sense of community in your student organization as well, and make student members really engaged with each other and being able to listen to each other and share in each other's experience. So that's something that student leaders have started to incorporate as well, and have found high levels of success with. So again, you want to have something to excite the students about coming to meetings, so that it's not just them listening to the leaders talking at them about what's happening. And maybe that is good for some students, but you also want to make sure that your students are getting really excited to come to those meetings. And if all your students are really excited about just getting into talking about the operations of your organization, that's fantastic. But we also know that that's not how everybody operates. So make sure you know your student members and what makes everybody really excited. And that'll really help to build those intended outcomes that you might have, and then figuring out what makes those students want to come to the meeting, and trying to cater to each different type of student that you might have. A little tip that we have is try to keep that executive talk out of general body meetings as best you can. So that talk that goes between the leaders of the organization, that's kind of that more background information, behind the scenes kind of stuff that your general student member doesn't necessarily need to be a part of the conversation with. Try to keep that into more discussions just with the leadership of your organization as opposed to the general body. That can definitely help with the engagement and involvement of your students and making them want to come to meetings more, because if you are talking more about all of that behind the scenes stuff, and they might, if they're not really a part of the conversation, that can really throw off the engagement of some students in your organization, if that's how you operate your meeting. So that is a tip that we have for you, just to make sure that that executive talk and the behind the scenes kind of stuff does stay in between the student leaders, as opposed to being talked about in general body meetings. Unless, of course, all student members have a voice in all the say of the organization. And that's about it. We do have another training coming up next week in this series. It'll be the last one, hosted by Sammy. It'll be on the topic of recruitment, and just make sure that you RSVP on Huskies Connect as well. And then we also have the student organization registration has opened up for the coming academic year for 2021-2022. So make sure that you get your student organization registered for the next academic year. Registration opened up on April 5th and will be closing in September. So make sure that you, you can get on that really early now here in April. You could wait until August or September, but if you get it done before the summer happens, then that's just going to be something that one less thing that you have to worry about when you come back to campus. And then also we do want to note that all of the registration processes have been combined, and they are all on Huskies Connect now. So you won't have to worry about going into D2L and self-registering for that registration course. It is all incorporated on Huskies Connect. So just to keep note of that. If you do have any questions related to student organizations, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of the student organization support staff. All of our emails are listed here on the slide, and we'll make sure to get any pertinent links that have been mentioned throughout this training in the description below. I want to thank everybody who did attend today, and if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much.